Queensland, and what great news. Tomorrow marks 10 years until the opening ceremony will be held here in Brisbane, but will resonate right throughout Queensland.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Airpole State of Origin Series winners for 2022, Queensland.
School holidays have started and the crowds have arrived in droves on the Gold Coast. The September break is expected to be one of the Queensland's busiest in many years. Jordan Quinn, it's expected $2 billion will be spent.
By 2 million Aussies, Katrina, holidaying around Queensland over the next 4 weeks.
We have agreed today that we will end, states and territories will end their respective mandatory isolation requirements on the 14th of October.
I hope you get a little bit of a flavour of some of the great things that have been going on in the last 12 months.
Yeah, busy year, huh? When you look at it in aggregate like that, amazing. So I guess the Premier, when she spoke earlier, talked about some of the facts and figures of the year that was, and some amazing domestic spend figures, really sort of knocking the lights out on all of that. Obviously, we've still got some way to go on international for recovery as well. But I think, for me, some of the stories that the figures don't necessarily tell, but are absolutely behind it, is all of those businesses, many of you who have actually just sort of made that transition to domestic, really sort of started to love domestic and sort of adapted the businesses accordingly, and all that innovation that we've seen as well. And, talking to people around the patch, it's very much like, actually, we've done this because we had to, but now we're going to keep it because it's actually really good for business. So I think that's that's the untold story in the numbers in some ways.
Yeah, well, those numbers still do tell a story. To the year to June 2022, domestic OVE $19.6 billion, international OVE $1 billion. Now that is not the share that we want to have. We want to see that international share raise, but I do think that domestic OVE was obviously an extraordinary record, but we don't, I think people have found and discovered and rediscovered Queensland, and we don't want to lose that, and we don't want to lose that share that we have, that share that we've regained. So there are a number of lessons in that, but absolutely you're right. I'm hearing that everywhere I go about the way in which businesses have adapted and been able to draw out expenditure out of domestic tourists. That the tradition of the fly and flop of domestic tourists into Queensland destinations in particular has been shifted. The dial has been shifted, and more people are getting out there and engaging in experiences and taking on and getting more involved and doing more, and as a consequence, spending more. So that's how we can leverage it up as well, and we want to keep that going, particularly as we know that there is going to be a continued challenge to, as we've seen some of the stats this morning with some of our presenters, about how there's going to be a continued challenge of how international markets reopen. They will reopen, and we're going to be working on that, and we're in the field encouraging the aspiration and encouraging the closing of the deal. But if that's going to be a little bit slower, let's hang on to the other side of that coin in terms of hanging on to more domestic experiences and domestic expenditure.
And I think as well, recognising that that's going to also take investment, isn't it? And we've got to make sure that we are collectively, continuing to to put into investment into product, into experience. We came up with this idea through consultation of sort of cutting edge relevance in product as an aspiration. And really, in order to do that, you know, and particularly to meet some of the new customers and new opportunities that, you know, Rose spoke about so elegantly earlier, that does take continual investment right the way through the cycle. So industry and government coming together to do exactly that. Big and early, I think, was the mantra. Let's go big, let's go early, and we'll hopefully enjoy the compounding effect of that in the outer years of the plan as we approach the Olympics.
That's right, and that's where having you know, the target identified by the expert panel and adopted by towards Tourism 2032 does adopt that big and ambitious $44 billion target. And it does rely upon a number of different factors, but we've got to be ambitious and we've got to have a stretch target in front of us, but we know that the capability exists, you know, within this room and beyond to be able to realise that. But looking at and continuing to work on the ways in which we can leverage that up is really the task, and a shared task, a task that that government stands ready to play a role in, at all levels, but particularly the Palaszczuk government does, that our great tourism organisations and peak bodies play a key role in. But fundamentally, it's industry that will deliver, that industry that will be the ones that make the decisions, make the choices, make the investments that'll make the difference. The government stepped in and stepped up, and all governments stepped in and stepped up during the time of the pandemic, because that was the right time to do it. But we know that when the Queensland tourism industry is humming and at its best, it's industry doing stuff, not government doing stuff, it's industry doing stuff. So we want to be there and be in support and alongside the whole way, but we want to make sure it's the best environment for industry to grasp these opportunities and grasp these ambitions and take it forward.
It's probably just worth unpacking that $44 billion, I think it was $44.4 billion target, just because it does sound like a very scary headline number. And I guess, you know, what it requires, what the model has assumed within that was that basically we were going to have a period of recovery back to 2019, so pre-COVID levels. Obviously, you know, as we've said, we're doing better on that domestically. Internationally, we've still got a gap there at the moment. And then it requires us to perform at our peak market share. So it's ambitious because we've got to be on our best game and at our best, but it's kind of also at a level that we have been before. So, you know, we felt that was the sort of right place to pitch this. That would be the right level of ambition. Obviously, China is a big element of that $44.4 billion. It's about 7.5%, something like that. So, you know, that does rely on China market coming back. But equally, you know, let's do everything we can to make sure that we're welcoming our Chinese guests, but let's also focus on those new markets, and that you've been doing that through the Aviation Attraction Fund has been a pretty key part of that.
Yeah, it has. I think you're right, Liz. While those figures, those numbers do rely upon our peak, and that does rely upon having the world's biggest market back. We all know that we can't rely upon a set of geopolitical environments that are absolutely perfect for us. We hope that we get them, but we can't rely upon them. But what we can do is make sure that we don't just rest in that on relying upon that coming back, and we just don't, in fact, you know, throw our hands up and think we can't do anything as a result. What we've got to do is be out there and be engaged, and be looking at the new markets and supporting new markets. Now, we're doing that in terms of presence and getting out there, and I want to congratulate the team at TEQ on getting out there and being globally present and trading off the aspiration that's happening at the moment, trading off the back of the Tourism Australia campaign, for instance. So that making sure that Say G'day becomes Say G'day the Queensland way is a key thing that we want to keep doing and take it into new places and new markets. And we heard this morning, as you say, from Rose around the potentiality of new markets like, and we heard it from Sarah as well, about the new markets like new other Asian markets that we can seeing significant growth of middle class and significant growth of individuals and others with disposable income ready to travel and with the appetite and capability of travel. Markets like India, markets like Vietnam, like Indonesia, like the Philippines, they're all areas where we want to have focus, and they're all areas where we haven't had traditionally a great aviation links, and that's where things like our like the $200 million aviation attraction investment fund provides that opportunity to lever that up. And I want to acknowledge that was inspired by one of the interim recommendations. It was certainly something the government was thinking about. And at the time, when it was recommended by the interim in the interim report from the expert panel, Liz, thank you for all of your work on that. That was Sydney Airport had a $60 million fund out and about, and so of course we had to outdo that.
Love the spirit of competition when it works out like that. It's a very good outcome. But yes, substantive investment and done early on as well. So I think that sets us up. Really well. Certainly in our plan and our recommendations, we called out sort of 10 game changers for Queensland. I thought it was worth just unpacking a few of those because I know you've got a few things to share with us. There was a big focus on the plan and sustainability. We've got a panel coming up soon, so I'm very excited to deep dive into that. But particularly on the recommendations, sort of twofold, I suppose. We talked about the need for industry itself to align with that net zero ambition of the state and to sort of really get our own house in order in the way that we operate, and recognising that that's going to take a planning and a journey. It's not something that happens overnight, but a strong recommendation that we've got to start putting the building blocks in place now for that to happen quick enough that it needs to. The other aspect of that was, of course, the opportunity itself around ecotourism as a product. It's we've heard absolutely again today the appeal that has, the natural environment that we have, and the sort of natural assets and culture. So that's certainly been an area that we think we can absolutely win and lead. And I think you agree, Minister?
Absolutely. I think it is a space where we can do more, and we are doing more. There's some hero projects, but there's also the work that's going on amongst a range of operators out and about, and not necessarily being being celebrated as much as we should be. That makes a difference in it as well. But we've all got to get there, and there were a range of recommendations that'll make a difference in that sort of space.
Great. Okay. The other piece was sort of putting that visitor mindset first, and we saw that very much as a having products and experience out there that really are inclusive and diverse in their nature, but really sort of do appeal to all. And I know we've got a panel coming up soon on accessible tourism. The Premier, of course, announced the year of accessible tourism earlier, and that's a space that you're very keen to support.
Oh, a great announcement by the Premier, and very much a reaction to the conversations we've been having with industry over a period of time. And it was great to see the work that was announced DestinationQ last year to have Get Skilled Access, that company that the Premier called out, that Zach will be here, part of the panel later. His brother Dylan's part of the team as well. They've the work that we've done over the last 12 months really set the groundwork and set the place for this. But it's a $12 million package to help tourism operators increase their accessibility of their experiences and products, because 1 in 5 people are living with a disability, and that sector spends about $8 billion a year on tourism services. So it's not a part of the market that you want to be ignoring. And the reality is, and we heard it today wonderfully from Nick, one of the panelists will be up with us later, that so much of the visitor economy does do good things in this space, but it doesn't necessarily know how to tell its story. And that's where that $12 million funding is going to consist of $10 million of an accessible tourism Queensland fund to help small to medium tourism enterprises increase their accessibility for people of all abilities. But also there's going to be some other funds, a $1 million fund about raising awareness and capability in helping telling their story. So those people already are accessible and understanding what are the ways to tell that story and help engage it. And there'll be also some funding for some other targeted initiatives as well. But very excited about the role that can play in a great story. But tagging it in with the idea of a year of accessible tourism will really drive home how important this is, as we've seen with years of Indigenous tourism and years of the outback tourism as well.
Yeah, the impact that had certainly is sort of catalytic almost, isn't it, to have that focus on it across the industry. And also, you know, it's one of those things, if we get it right, it actually just makes the product better for everybody, actually, whether they need specific details or not. So really good to hear that. You've been busy, haven't you, with your team and with the Department of Tourism working through our recommendations?
There's a whole bunch of things that are getting out there in response to issues that have been raised as part of the action plan, but also in the work that we're doing with our great and important partners amongst the RTOs. I'm happy to announce today we've got some initiatives that are being announced today. There's the RTO contestable funding that I know a lot of those regional tourism organisations are very keenly following and want to know what's going to happen with them. So there's $3 million being shared between all 13 RTOs to promote their regions with 19 new projects. It's part of that $15 million over 3 years election commitment that was made at the last election. And some of the examples that are in there is that there's some projects like a Drive Queensland, a statewide collaboration led by Gladstone, but telling the story about more drive experiences and drive holidays. There's Transformation Sunshine Coast that's being led by Visit Sunshine Coast. There's Summer in the Tropics being led by Tourism Tropical North Queensland. Great promotion there. So great examples of what we're doing in that space. But equally, in response to that how important that eco tourism is, we've recognised getting that eco-certification for destinations is something that adds an extra element and tells that extra story. So I'm very pleased to announce today that there's $2 million across 16 destinations under the Eco-Certified Tourism Destination Program to grow their eco-friendly credentials and position them to be those real leaders in sustainable tourism. So 16 destinations receiving across them between $50,000 and $150,000 to achieve that eco-certification. So I really want to congratulate those destinations that have signed up to work on that.
Great stuff. And of course, the plan is also released today, your strategy. I had a sneak preview of this, so ahead of the day, and very excited to see a lot of the work that the industry did and the issues that industry and opportunities that industry raised with us as a panel through consultation is very much reflected in that. So a big thumbs up from that perspective. Really good that it's sort of set out now in 3 phases of work, so we can sort of got interim targets to kind of go after and make sure that we really keep focused as industry and government working together, and very much that sort of partnership approach that I know that you and I have spoken a lot about before, and we're really kind of keen to, we were really keen in setting out recommendations that was sort of front and centre.
Well, as you highlighted and as we referred to earlier, it's very important that this program and process is all about the whole of industry and government and agencies working together. That it isn't just a set of tasks for government or for one section of government. It's across the board, but it's also something where industry needs to step up and take responsibility too. So just to summarise, across the 75 recommendations, government has accepted some 46. There's 11 recommendations that are noted, subject to some further funding availability. And I should flag that those 46 have come along with some $227 million worth of programs that will support their delivery. There's 9 recommendations that require further government consideration, and there are 9 that are either just not accepted or have had an alternate action proposed. So we've generally thought about it. We generally engage with stakeholders across the rest of government. This was always going to be a process where this was the tourism industry's position put to government, and we've had to synthesise that with broader government policies and broader government commitments, and we've come out with what I think is a very actionable piece of work. So looking forward to continuing the work with the industry to deliver.
Yeah, indeed. And I think, it's all in there. It's the right framework for us to move forward with. I just encourage that we keep our foot to the floor on ambition level, that we keep pushing forward, because that 44.4 billion target is an ambitious one, and it does require us to be at our best game. So making sure that we're creating, the right environment for investment, the right confidence level for private sectors come forward and make those investments. And I know, certainly talking to the tourism team, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes on some of our recommendations about enablers as well. So, for example, industry is really in need of transparent and very clear approvals processes and things like that when it comes to making investments, looking at projects to invest in. So I know the department's been leading a piece of work around sort of investor as customer kind of idea, and saying, well, what does that journey look like, and actually, how can it be improved? How can we make it more transparent? How can we give people more clarity that they're looking for? So that's great. It's great to hear that work is underway and that mindset is being thought about, for sure. It will make a big difference. What haven't we talked about? Oh, I know what we haven't talked about.
I suspect that someone wants to hear what I have to say about one of the recommendations, which was in relation to a tourism levy.
Correct.
So I know that that recommendation was one that garnered a lot of attention and it's garnered a lot of debate across the industry. As you will see, the government's response and the decisions towards Tourism 2032 says that government won't be supporting a tourism levy, and that's in line with our commitment to no new taxes, the commitment we took to the last election. But I do highlight, and we flagged in the report as highlighting that this is a matter for industry, that the reporting on that is a matter for industry to continue to discuss and to debate and to advocate around. Completely comfortable with industry continuing to be an advocate around different revenue measures and ways to garner and raise funding support for destinations and destination contribution and not only marketing, but also some people see it as an avenue for investment in infrastructure and facilities. The fundamentals is that local government has the capacity to raise funds for this purpose now. In fact, here we are on the Gold Coast, where the City of the Gold Coast raises funds under their current revenue raising capacity for a specific purpose and dedicates it to Destination Gold Coast. And Destination Gold Coast does some great marketing and does some great contributing to the sector as a result. So we feel comfortable that the tools are there and available for destinations to take up, and encourage industry to continue to be advocating to local government to take that choice and take those decisions where it suits the region. And that was very much the recommendation. The recommendation was about how should we make sure that there's the tools available for regions to be able to respond to their needs and destinations to be able to respond to their needs. So I know that there are some people who are disappointed that a particular form is not going to be enabled in line with our policy around no new taxes, but it's entirely a matter that local government can certainly act on. And as I say, I reiterate, happy for the sector to continue, for the industry to continue to be an advocate around the new ways and the better ways in which we can support this great industry.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's really important that we do keep the conversation going. It's a difficult one. It's complex. There's not a clear answer that sort of is right for everybody. And there's a sort of timing overlay here as well that we really heard quite strongly when we talked to industry about it as well, that not everybody's in that same recovery spot. But, I'd certainly encourage that to keep going, because I think there will be a time when it's more suitable solution and we can find something, and also to make sure that we're looking to other marketplaces as well. We did a little bit of that in our work, but I think there's probably still more to do out there, and I know that bodies like QTIC and LGAQ are obviously very active also in supporting industry through that process. So when you look ahead and you look to 2032, what would you like to see for the industry?
Well, I've been encouraged by having all the talk that we've heard about at just about every session today, and indeed yesterday at DestinationIQ as well, DIQ. There've been talk around that I think it was referred to yesterday as a compass point, that opportunity that 2032 represents to be to set ambition, to set determination, and take that platform for the way in which our part of the world, and as a consequence, our destinations and our stories can be told to the globe through the vehicle of the 2032 Olympics and Paralympics, and told in a way that we get to help describe and determine. That's the opportunity that it represents. And it is, it's 3,549 days until the opening ceremony and of the Olympic Games. So we do have a clear timetable and clear opportunity. And it's great to hear some of the things, like at the last panel, I heard some things referred to about the work that should be happening to prepare things, and it was exactly, it described exactly what we are doing with some people on the legacy process, so that was nice to hear. But there'll be more to happen, and no question that one of the greatest opportunities out of hosting an Olympic and Paralympic Games is for the tourism industry. It is for the visitor economy. It is that, as I say, to tell our stories, to share our places, to share our experiences, and do that on a global stage. There is replete with opportunities. We've got to help make sure we leverage it up and build it in to what we do. But look forward to working with everyone in this in this industry to make sure we make the most of those opportunities.
I think it's great that we've got you with a foot in both those camps as well, so that we can sort of rely on that, the linkage and the understanding and advocacy for the industry that you bring, which is really, really good.
Well, I think one of the little pieces, just a little tiny piece around telling our stories to the globe, and this is just one example of so many. One example is that NBC, the United States broadcast rights holder for the Olympic and Paralympic Games, has already bought and paid for, and this is what's contributing to how we'll be able to fund and run the Games, already paid for their commitment to the broadcast rights for 2032. Now, traditionally, if you follow what they have done in previous Games, that means that after the Paris Games in 2024, so then for the 8 years leading up to the Games in 2032, there will be an NBC News team based in Brisbane. They lean that forward into that program of the cycles around the Olympic and Paralympic Games, that they want to have that. Now, we all know that they'll need content. They'll want to be telling stories, and we want to give them every opportunity to tell all the positive and good stories. And I know that there are literally 900 people in this room who are now thinking about what's the story we're going to help NBC tell to that North American market. And that's just one small example of the ways in which this will take us to the globe.
I love it. That's such a great kind of platform, isn't it? We've got to do that. And for me, when I sort of look ahead, I think about, very much the sustainability of the industry, sustainability in an environmental sense, but also in an economic and a social sense as well. An industry which is inclusive in the way that we've discussed, that really has strong participation and opportunity for our First Nations people. And to that end, I just wanted to just flag, one of the recommendations we did have was around making sure that that big, hairy 44 billion economic target was also supported in equal measure by targets around community involvement, targets around the environment and positive impact on the environment, and targets around social outcomes and customer outcomes, visitor outcomes as well. Because I think if we look at it in that balanced way, we'll end up making decisions and creating, an industry which is kind of much more sustainable, but also much more appealing to future visitors as well. So hopefully those things get hardwired into our collective decision-making and psyche.
And that, I think, Liz, is part of the opportunity too around having a major global event like the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games being one of the linchpins in the way in which we think and the way we hardwire things is it's having that global attention holds us, we're in the stark light. We have to hold ourselves to high standards. There's some standards that we've committed to as part of our host contract. With the IOC and with the International Paralympic Committee. But I think we know that means that we have to hold ourselves to a high account of that global standard, and that'll be important to what we all do together. But what an exciting ride, and what the benefits that will deliver, not just in 2032, not just in the 10 years leading up, but in the 10 years beyond, in the 20 years beyond, for the remainder of this 21st century, that we'll be able to trade off after being a part of this extraordinary green and gold runway.
Are we going to come back next year at DestinationQ and talk about progress and see where we've got to collectively?
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. I think it's what we need to do. We need to be reporting back and engaging with this group about what we're doing on this journey, but also about how the new ideas and the new innovations that have come up in that intervening period are being adopted and adapted to what we need to do. And it's been great to see that being a real focus of the program today as well.
Great. Thank you. Good chat. Thank you very much.
Thanks all.